Welcome, fellow business brokers. I want to welcome you to part two of a two-part series where we have some of the best top business brokers in the United States joining us. We've got business brokers today that are from independent shops, franchise shops. They're all from all over the country. They all approach the industry a little bit different from each other. But at the end of the day, they are all top business brokers, and they're here today to share their knowledge with us. So I appreciate you guys joining us today. I'd like to introduce Jeanie first. How you doing, Jeanie?
I'm great, thank you. And you?
Doing fantastic. Jeanie's from Oregon. She's with FP Transitions. She did 18 deals last year, $26 million plus in total sales, and she was the IBBA Top Individual Global Producer Award winner for last year. That's pretty impressive. Congratulations, Jeanie.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
Next, I'd like to introduce Emmet. Emmet is from Ohio. He is with Sunbelt Business Brokers. He's also not just a business broker, but he's a certified exit planning advisor. He was an IBBA Chairman Circle Award winner for 2019, and he previously worked for an investment banking firm. Thank you for joining us today, Emmet.
Thank you.
And hey, congratulations on your IBBA award.
Thank you.
That was the same award that I wanted, so I felt very, I was very happy that I won that.
Good company.
And then we've got with us Jim. Jim's from Illinois. He's with Business Broker Experts, and he was also a 2019 IBBA Chairman Circle Award winner. Congratulations, Jim.
Thanks. Congratulations, you too.
Thank you. I'm glad you're joining with us today, Jim. Jim and I have attended several classes together in Georgia and also met up a few times at IBBA workshops. So we've gotten to know each other pretty well, and I'm glad you could be with us today, Jim.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
We also have JT with us. He is from South Carolina and North Carolina. He works both those areas. He's with Transworld Business Advisors, and in 2019, he did $2 million plus in total sales. Thanks for joining us, JT.
Thanks, Jimbo. Appreciate you putting it together.
And we also have Clint with us. Clint is from Texas. He's with Texas Business Buyers. In the last 4 years, he sold $30 million worth of businesses. He targets the $1 to $5 million purchase price for businesses, and he was also a 2019 IBBA Chairman Circle Award winner. Thanks for joining us, Clint.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We have Peter. Peter Goodman is from Massachusetts. He is with Goodman and Company Business Brokers. He was also a 2019 IBBA Chairman Circle Award winner. He's the president of New England Business Brokers Association. He's a CBI instructor and a workshop presenter for the IBBA. Thanks for joining us today, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. You know, it's very difficult, coming up with everybody's bios because each and every panelist that we have with us today is very, very accomplished. I think I could have talked for 10 or 15 minutes about each person. So I just kind of gave the highlights on the situation. My first question to you, Jeanie, you and I spoke earlier in the week, and the COVID-19 really has not affected your practice. Can you tell the audience why?
We're a niche. We handle niche business. We work with financial service practices only, so they're essential. They keep working. We've done everything. We typically work remotely with them anyway, so we don't meet in person with clients. I meet or over the phone, internet, emails. Everything's handled virtually. So we're very used to this.
Besides the COVID-19, right, Jeanie?
Yes, exactly. So we do that anyway. So it hasn't affected us in that way because that's what we do. So we don't see a big difference. The difference is when the buyer and sellers want to meet in person. That's been a bit of a struggle, but we're using a lot of Zoom now.
Okay. So because you're mainly, before the COVID-19, you were targeting essential businesses, And because you kind of work with people all over the country and you haven't met person to person prior to the COVID-19, your business really hasn't been affected as much, that much or at all with the sales.
No,
No. So you don't think you're going to see any downturn in your sales this year?
no, we will probably see an upturn
Wow.
in our sales because in the financial industry, we're talking about financial planners, investment advisors, people that were going through things thinking it was really easy it's been really good for a while. So it's been easy. Well, we'll just work another 5 years because this is so easy. This is another rough year, 2008. Then now we've got the downturn in the market. There's a lot of extra work for some of these people that were thinking about retiring. Now they're really more considering it. Their holdback is that they don't want to abandon their clients. So we're doing more of what's called a sell-in stay, where the sellers stay on for a longer period of time to make sure that the clients are comfortable and seeing it more like a merger and then a slow exit. So, yeah, we're going to see an upturn in the sellers.
And you're seeing more of that because of the COVID-19, that the sellers are staying
Yes.
around longer.
Yes.
Okay. And when you and I spoke the other day, I know that your sales you're actually going to increase this year, but your terms are kind of changing. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the terms?
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of term changes. Now I was on the financial webinar this morning for IBBA and listening to the way they do it. It is different for the way we typically have. We do use SBA, but we typically have seller notes, and there's a look back provision. So that look back provision is for client retention based on revenue or the assets of the clients. So with that look back provision, right now we're going out a little longer on it. Instead of 12 months, then the note locks in, maybe we're going out 18 months to give it some recovery, the market some recovery period, so that the assets get back up to where, a good level, and the revenue then of course matches that. So it's just some different deal structures.
Gotcha. And Jeanie, can you explain to the audience what difference is between an earnout and a look back?
Yes. So obviously an earnout is a shared risk, shared reward. Revenue goes up, seller gets more, revenue goes down, seller gets less. And in our industry, it's typically a 3 to 5 year period if they use an earnout. So the seller typically may need to stay licensed. Depends on their type of business. If they're an investment advisor, they don't need to be, but they're still watching things. They're watching the market. They're watching everything. It's a little bit of a concern. Some of them like it if they if they think it's going to get better and there's going to be an upside. The look back provision on a note is that it's a seller's note, and there's a 12-month look back for retention based on the revenue. So typically we say we expect 90% or more of the revenue to have been retained at 12 months. If it is, the note locks in at that point in time and is just paid out. No more the seller doesn't need to be involved anymore or need to be watching anything. It's the period of time where the seller needs to make sure those clients get over and are introduced and comfortable and stick around. There can also be an upside. So the note can adjust up or down at whatever period of time they decide to make that adjustment.
Great.
It's typically 12 to 18 months.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jeanie. Peter, what are you seeing in the Massachusetts area, the New England area?
Well, as some people may be aware, Massachusetts has been one of the hardest hit states in the country. And so it's really changed life up here substantially. And it's been that way for the past 2 or 3 months. So yeah, things have really changed for business brokers. First thing I want to say, Jim, is first of all, for the business brokers out there listening to this, in the world that we live in, especially in social media, if you're on Facebook and so forth, you tend to see the highlight reel of people's lives. And you see the vacation pictures, and they're out with the kids, and everything is great and glorious. And so, for those of you out there that aren't doing so well right now because of COVID-19, rest assured there's plenty of us that are hard hit by this, and you're not alone. And it doesn't have to be a thing where, you know, you got to parade your accomplishments right now. Just get by, do the best you can, and, you know, really try to learn how to roll with the punches and adjust where you have to. But this is a tough time for everyone, I'd say. I've had deals that have gone south as a result of COVID-19, but I have some things under agreement too. And I guess it really just depends on the type of business. And, but yeah, it's really affected things here. So for example, I had a children's gym that was under agreement, and clearly that thing shut down. And so that deal went south almost immediately. And other businesses, certainly food businesses, things like that, you know, they can't go forward right now. And, but again, other businesses I'm selling aren't so affected. But yeah, it's really changed the climate up here in Massachusetts. Everyone that's calling me right now to sell a business, we have to discuss COVID-19 and how it's affected things right now. What's the marketing strategy? And so everything I'm doing right now, I'd say, has changed.
How much, what percentage do you think your business will be down this year versus previous years?
Well, I had a particularly great year last year. Sorry about the highlight reel. I don't mean to do that, but I had a lot of sort of, you know, I had sort of the perfect storm of deals come through last year. That was great. It doesn't always happen that way. I tend to have big cyclical changes in my business. I'm up and then I'm down. And but this year, it's just going to be looking like a so-so year, an okay year. Not great, but I'm making a living and I'm happy, and that's all that counts.
Yeah, that's a great attitude, Peter. That's a great attitude. Let's move down to Ohio. Emmet, what's going on in Ohio, and what are you seeing, and how is it affecting your business, the COVID-19?
Well, last week we had Dan Long on part one of this session, and Dan Long is in Cincinnati, and he did mention, I was curious of how he was going to respond about Ohio, but we seem to be in a bubble in Ohio. I mean, I did have my first turn down on the SBA financing, and it's the fact it's a retail type operation. But for the most part, the fabrication, home health care, some of those industries, and now we're sticking with essential services when it comes to considering a client. But mirroring what Dan said last week, we seem to be in a bubble in Ohio. It's business as usual for us.
All right, great. Appreciate it. JT, North Carolina and South Carolina.
No, it's interesting because, you know, North Carolina and South Carolina, sister states, so to speak. North Carolina under complete lockdown and just coming into their phase 2 of opening things back up again. South Carolina, in fact, Greenville, at one point, I read an article that said that we were the least effective social distancing city in the nation. So not something that you want to brag about at that particular point, but so from that perspective, our 2 offices are about an hour apart. And South Carolina, we've continued to move forward with new listings. We have 8 deals under contract right now that have all begun sometime either during February or March, or even 1 or 2 that have come on in April. In fact, our April 1 is set to close tomorrow. So, you know, from the South Carolina side, a lot less restrictive. North Carolina, I think people were doing a great job following what the governor said, stay locked down. But we still picked up a few new listings there during really late March, early April, when this thing really started to take effect. But a lot of today, in the last maybe 30 days, more buyer activity and more seller activity. You know, people calling and saying, because I've been furloughed, I've been laid off, whatever the term of the day is that people are using. And I don't want to go back and work for somebody else who's going to control my destiny. So our buyer activity has really elevated quite a bit. And sellers in South Carolina, because their businesses did not all shut down the same way as maybe North Carolina did, still a lot of active folks on the seller side that maybe were thinking about selling a year or 2 ago, but things were going good. They were riding the wave, and now they're coming back and saying, I'm out. So help me process through this, whether it's going to be something that happens in the next, you know, year or 2 years. Prepare me to get out of this thing.
Okay, great. How much do you think you're going to be down this year? Are you thinking it'll be about the same, up, down?
No, I think we'll be up. I think
Really?
we'll be up. We've also, I think we'll be up because our activity has jumped. The number of new listings coming on board and the number of people that we've added to our team has increased. And again, same situation, right? As soon as we started looking at what was happening economically with people in the workforce, from my perspective, that's the time to start putting lines in the water and see who you can pick up to add to your team.
That's great. JT, great. That's fantastic. Hey, Jim, what do you think over there in Illinois?
I think we're pretty similar to Peter. Illinois has been hit pretty hard. I think we're got the third largest number of COVID cases, just behind New Jersey and New York. I think we got about 114,000 in Chicago, and I'm in the Chicagoland area. So, the non-essential businesses are still closed. We've been closed since about mid-March. So they're going to be opening soon. So, but similar to JT, I've noticed, March and April was just completely dead. The buyer calls were just dead. In May, we really seemed to get more interest in the listings. So I think whether it's people that were laid off or just, realizing things are going to go, open up soon and starting to take a look. So as far as personally, I had one deal that was supposed to close at the very end of March, and the buyer walked, and did get that one back under contract quickly. The buyer's taking advantage of wants to close in August, take advantage of that SBA CARES Act, where they're going to first 6 payments are made by the SBA. I had another deal that was supposed to close early April, and as far as I know, the bank kind of delayed it. As far as it was supposed to close today, I haven't got word yet. So hopefully it's closing as we're speaking. So
okay, great.
But
thank you, Jim.
I'm an independent, so kind of, this year I've got a couple nice listings coming in. So just depends if I can get them to the finish line or not this year or next, depending on how my year will be.
All right, great. Clint, what's going on in Texas?
So Texans are pretty much done with the virus. That's my field report from Memorial Day weekend. I guess we just kind of it's kind of in our blood. We're kind of a self-reliant, rebellious group of in our state. But I have friends. I went out on the rivers. I'm in the Texas Hill Country, and I've had family in town. So we went tubing, which was kind of like a fun, socially distant-ish thing you can do out in the country. But all the places where you can put in and all the beaches and things like that, they were just slam packed. And I have friends that went to the coast and said, in all their years of going to the coast, they've never seen more people out on the beach, and they've never seen, and so keep your eye on Texas and the numbers. And in my opinion, like just on the COVID thing is that, we were all trying to be kind of obedient in March, April, but when it got to May, I think a lot of Texans just said, all right, we're tired of this. And I hear that's happening in quite a few states. But if Texas doesn't have a massive spike in the cases after the partying and debauchery we did on Memorial Day weekend, then I think that you guys are all safe, because we're kind of the guinea pigs, I would say, at this point. We have been very blessed. My county only has had 17 cases. We've had 0 hospitalizations, and we've had 0 deaths. And so there's a lot of confidence here because our case count's been so low. But yeah, as far as our brokerage goes, March and April were tough. We had a really it feels like the whole thing came to a screeching halt in April. My model is a little different in terms of, like, I have quite a few W-2 employees on staff, and so I'm a little bit more like a regular small business versus a lot of brokers that are all kind of 1099ers and commission based. And so, I had to go through, I felt like I was in the same boat as a lot of our clients, just trying to get a PPP loan, trying to make payroll and doing all that. And it was a little scary. I had 3 deals I thought were going to close in April, and none of them closed in April. 1 closed in May, and then 2 are still together, but they're just being substantially delayed, just like Peter had his that was in an affected industry. Is what I'm seeing is, like, most deals aren't falling apart, but they're getting substantially delayed. So it feels like we're having to work just as hard or harder but with a little bit more time risk added to the deals, which I think gives any broker a little heartburn. So yeah, it definitely hasn't. I feel like it hasn't been all roses. I feel like we'd be doing better this year without the pandemic, of course. But overall, like I think we'll probably end up close to what we did last year. But to me, I'm a growth-minded guy, and to me, the same is down. And
Right.
so that's just because I'm ambitious and aggressive. But I'm trying to just count my blessings, and count that I'm healthy, my family's healthy, our community's been weathering this pretty well. And last year was a good year, so even a repeat isn't a bad thing, And so it's just kind of recalibrating your expectations. What I would say as far as like adjustments we're making is while April kind of ground to a halt, in May, all of a sudden the phone started ringing again, really in the last 2 weeks, and sellers have been appearing, lots of sellers, and my firm, like our focus right now is being really choosy and making sure that we can take on a deal that's been affected by COVID, but we want to make sure that it's got a bright future ahead. Because what I see a lot of banks and buyers doing is they're taking you could get a deal under LOI, but as things are reopening and getting back to normal, they're still going to be looking really hard at the June financials and the July financials prior to closing, and trying to make sure, kind of validate because all the sellers are all saying the same thing, right? They're all saying, oh yeah, we were all shut down, but things will be back to normal, lickety split, and we're going to be right back in this. And so I think that there's a certain grain of salt taken with buyers and banks right now, that they're saying, okay, as long as this happens, we'll close this deal and we'll pay that price. And so I think for brokers on this call, now's the time to be really choosy and just put yourself in the shoes of the buyer and make sure, is this a business that I think is going to make money in the second half of 2020 and is going to come out of this okay? If it's not, then you may be setting yourself up for like a long, painful road of kind of getting it together and then it falling apart as the economy bucks, over the next couple months. And so I'd be really choosy on that. And then I would solve gaps right now with creative deal structuring. That's what we're starting to do a little bit too, is just kind of like Jeanie said, with her deals, it is, if I see a gap now, and it's based on the assumption that, well, this was just because of COVID, but we all know this is going to be like that. And we say, okay, well, let's just write that into the contract. So we're going to close it at X price, but we're going to have a little bit of a holdback here just to make sure that it does happen the way you say, or we're going to fix it with seller carry, or and so I think this is the time that the good silver lining of this is I feel like it's knocked down the sellers' egos a bit, and we've all had those sellers, right, that we value their business, and they're saying, man, why would I sell it for that? I'll just work a few more years, and they act like they're invincible, like nothing bad will ever happen. And the times have been so good. And now I feel like that mindset just got completely shattered, because who could have seen this coming and who could have known? And so now we as brokers have a concrete thing to say, like, don't just assume every year is going to be just like the next and that you're invincible and that you can't be taken out of again. And I think that was a great thing that we were given as a blessing in our toolkit, to just say, hey, life doesn't always happen the same every year. And to kind of open them up to pricing their business right and solving with some creative deal structuring, and not taking for granted that you could just keep working forever until you die or something, but that everything's gonna be fine. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'll.
No, you're not talking too much. No, that's all really good information, Clint. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's good to know that you're being a little bit choosy on what listings you're taking, but at the same time, if they've been hit with the COVID-19, you're as long as they're doing well, you think they'll do well in the second half, you'll consider it. I think that's good. My attitude during this COVID-19 and, I've been doing this for 20 years, is just, I refuse to participate in the recession. That's my attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to acknowledge that we are having a downturn, with our economy? Yes, I do have to acknowledge that, but I'm changing the way that we're doing things and the way we're approaching the marketplace. And, those changes, I think, is what's going to take myself and my company through 2020 very strongly. Is anybody else changing their practice because of the COVID-19 for this year? And if so, what are you guys doing? JT, I think you were shaking your head there.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you know, by hook or by crook, right? You were forced to do much more of this type of interaction. You know, I prefer to meet people face to face. Jeanie was saying, hey, most of what we do has been done this way. And occasionally I have a guy that wants to meet face to face, buyer, seller, that type of thing. Ours is probably the opposite way to that. So we've instituted more of this, but I'm also careful to not then let that become my new norm. Because as things do start turning back on, I don't want to, this is me personally and the staff in our office, I'm saying, let's not get lazy, guys. Let's not lose the advantage that we've had in the past. And now, well, we have this technology, we've been using it, it's been very successful, and that has all been true. But I don't want to now adapt this as my new normal, if in fact I'm still going to be able to go back and meet people the way we used to meet people in the past.
What about JT? What about targeting businesses that have been hit pretty hard by the COVID-19? Are you willing to take them as a listing?
Well, I am, Jim, but in two pieces. The first, similar to what Clint was saying, you know, well, is this going to survive? Because realistically, you know, I might have this path where we go down this way, and there's the person saying, I'm not sure it's going to survive. Okay, then maybe the discussion isn't so much that we're going to sell the business as an ongoing concern. Is there some kind of an asset sale that needs to take place, a liquidation piece of it? And the other piece is for the businesses that you do see springing back, as Clint was saying. Well, yeah, we certainly want to help that seller make that transition. And that road is going to divide in two places, because one is going to be, hey, they're going to be back up into speed pretty quickly. The other is going to be, it's going to take this group a little bit of time. Let's coach them through getting it to the point where we can sell it and they can get out of it what they'd hoped they could get out of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably a little bit longer play in that second scenario, but we're open to both. You know, because you guys are small businesses. Clint was saying it. We did the same thing, the PPP, and, you know, looking at what our options are as a business operator. And I think when you can relate that to the sellers, they see that, you know, you're a lot like them. You're not just somebody who's riding in on the white horse to save the day. You're a business owner who's been in the same shoes that they're traveling in, and there's some empathy there. You can you know, side with them and understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, you do have resources or abilities to kind of help them get to where they want to get to, whether that's 6 months from now or, you know, a year and 6 months from now. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we've tried to do, is just say to them, hey, we understand your pain because we're a small business owner like you, and we've gone through a lot, but we also have some resources that you may not know are available. Let us help you, whichever way you decide you want to go.
Okay, great. Peter? Are you approaching the industry any different because of the COVID-19?
Well, I really like what JT just had to say about the use of Zoom with your meetings, and don't let it overtake everything, I should say. That's a really good idea. You do want to have that human contact. On the other hand, Zoom is just a very efficient way to run your business. So you only have so many hours in the day to get things done. And if you have to travel 3 hours for a quick face-to-face meeting, that's not good either. And so I think the answer is to just use it wisely. And when you need to be there in person, be there. But if it's shorter meetings, things that don't necessarily have to be in person, fire up the Zoom. And so I plan to start using it, and even beyond COVID-19. And but yeah, certainly all my meetings up until yesterday have been by Zoom that I've had over the last 2 or 3 months, of course, out of necessity. And up here in New England, even though, Jim, as I mentioned to you earlier, you guys, I think we're just about the first to come up with a nice COVID-19 agreement to use between buyer, seller, and broker for in-person meetings. And we actually ended up modifying that agreement quite a bit. And I sent you a copy of that. Our agreement really indemnifies and holds harmless all the parties equally. Nobody is a step above everybody else. And I think that's a nice approach to go. So that's what we're doing here for the in-person meetings. And I just used it for the first time yesterday. And as I also mentioned to you, the first thing the seller and the buyer did was they shook hands. I don't know.
That's
I
excellent.
don't get that, but it just happened. You know, I couldn't control it. But anyway, yeah, so I'm getting a lot of calls here, basically. Things have really changed because of the nature of the calls I'm getting. First of all, I don't know about you guys, but I just don't like selling hair salons. I mean, it's just not my thing. I don't know why. But I think I've gotten 10 hair salon, maybe not that many, at least 5 hair salon calls in the past 4 to 6 weeks. They're all shut down and, they're having troubles right now. Other businesses I'm getting calls for, a lot of food businesses, are you open right now? Got daycare centers calling, they're closed, and who knows once they reopen, how many of their, the kids are going to be able to come back, because maybe, for example, either the parents are out of work or they're going to be working from home and won't need the service as much. And so, a lot of the calls have basically, have been from businesses that really are going to be impacted significantly by COVID-19. So on the other hand, I've gotten a few good calls just recently of nice, good saleable businesses. And, I have an idea in mind of how I'll be valuing those businesses going forward, which basically just means, I think, is it okay if I switch topics a little bit here? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Oh, wait,
so,
before you do that, before you do that, Peter, you were talking about the buyer-seller acknowledgement that you guys came up with. It was New England Business Brokers Association came up with it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and so the BBF came out with one a couple weeks ago, and I think Peter did a good job of explaining why theirs is different. I just want everybody to know on the call that Peter, he's the president of NEBA, he said that New England Business Brokers Association is willing to share that agreement with any business broker out there. So if you are interested in that agreement, just email me and I'll send it out to you. I might not be able to send it out to you until the weekend. Just bear with me. I'm trying to make deals happen too. I get a lot of emails after these webinars. Go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So apparently, Jim, you don't mind getting about 100 emails after this Zoom call.
I don't mind
Or
it.
more.
Seriously, I don't mind it. It's for the benefit of our industry. We're all in this together. We really are.
And we really appreciate all your efforts here, Jim. This is really paying it forward times about 1,000 for you. Thank you so much for doing all this.
No, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
But when it comes to valuing the businesses right now, so as people are calling me, I'm thinking, how do we value these businesses? My opinion is you want as much as possible basically to value them based on their 2019 tax return and how you would ordinarily value them. And then you're just thinking about, okay, but how will COVID-19 impact it long term? So really it's really the look back is into 2019. That's what a good business this is. And how will it be performing really in 2021? Not so much how will it be performing in the next 3 months, because that's just not fair. And so what I'm doing is thinking of it as, pricing it that way with the idea of COVID-19 potentially impacting the future sales volume of the business a little bit and taking that into account. But I don't intend on providing projections to prospective buyers showing a loss of sales.
I don't do projections, period.
Well, you can sort of do a look ahead and say, if sales were to go down by 10%, then, based on the fixed expenses of this business, discretionary earnings would go down to a certain amount of money. And then expressing that in the CBR and then basing a price on that. That I will not do. I will still base it only on what happened historically, but when I'm talking to my seller and coming up with a good marketing number for that business, we should take COVID-19 into account in the way we value that business.
All right. Anybody else have any input on things you're doing different because of the COVID-19? Okay.
Well, if I could add to what Clint said earlier, we're needing to be selective because it's not hard to do a lot of busy work in our business and get the end result that we want. So like what most of you have shared, we do have to be selective. The other thing I wanted to share is we're working at the present today because we're concerned about the future. So basically what I'm telling people today is make as much money as you could today, because we have to remember our government gave away over $3 trillion and we still have an unemployment issue that we have to deal with coming to the future. And I'm concerned about next year. So make as much money as we could today.
That's good.
So I could share a little bit on that, Jim. my company has essentially 4 revenue streams, and 80% of our revenue is just success fees from transactions where we're representing the seller. But the other ones are, we have a bookkeeping division, so we have 4 or 5 bookkeepers on staff, and we actually do books for people under a different brand name. We have valuations, we do paid valuation work, and we also do consulting occasionally. And when the economy just came to a screeching halt in March and April, and I was wondering, are any deals going to happen? You know, because that's our big one. You know, that's our, you know, we're thinking like, how can we make it through this by increasing? Because there's big demand for all those other things. Because people that need help are getting through this, they might need consulting, they might need valuations, they might need, you know, and they might need help with getting their books in order to get distressed loans and things like that. And so it was kind of like all hands on deck with our team for a little while of like, are we going to have to completely pivot and change our business model during COVID? And I can kind of say at this point, so that conversation was had, you know, 2 months ago, and here we are 2 months later, and I'm like, nope, transactions, you know, like we need to stick to that because deals are still closing. So we just did close a big manufacturing deal, and that was kind of like a big relief because that just kind of proved that one can be done during the shutdown, and now that's given us more confidence that these other new stuff that's coming in the pipeline is going to come out the other side. But like, I guess where I was going with that is just to say we're not abandoning our core business model. We're just making sure that if you're going to keep doing transactions as your main thing, which is what we've decided to do, and what I'm sure most of you are going to decide to do, just make sure that, like I said earlier, that you're not picking a bad horse to ride. And those are those really affected industries, or those are going to be those really skeptical buyers. And I think that there's that temptation to try to be everybody's savior right now, because like I love small business owners. I think a lot of us get into this because we really love entrepreneurs, and we like, I came from a small business family, and like I hate seeing small business owners struggling, and I want to help, and I want to consult, and I want to kind of roll out my sleeves and help try to do whatever I can. But I realize like it's kind of unfeasible for us to divert all our attention and resources and manpower into like helping the people that are struggling. And that if we're going to kind of keep our interests going forward effectively, we've got to kind of pick the good ones and get those deals done the way we know how to. And so to me, I've told our marketing team, instead of just casting the normal wide net where we just kind of like, hey, if you want to buy a business or sell a business, you come to us, like we'll help you figure it out. And those types of messages, I think, come across kind of tone deaf right now when there's people that are, you know, half the business owners out there are fighting for survival. And you don't want to come across as that, you know, come on down, used car salesman, you know, like you just don't want to come across like that tone deaf person right now.
That's a great point, Clint. That's a great point.
So for me, there's a 2-pronged strategy. When you're messaging and marketing right now, I think that there's one is you're saying, hey, my heart's with you guys that are struggling, and here's some resources, but point them to other consultants, point them to bankers that are doing relief loans, point them to other people so that you don't become their life raft, but point them to all the life rafts out there. And maybe they'll remember you as the broker that cared enough to point them to resources when they needed them, and then when they're healthy and back on their feet. And so you need to have like your whole team trained up on, here's the available resources to point people to, and just kind of being like direct traffic director. So instead of people calling in and saying, hey, I'm about to go out of business, I'm a hairstylist, like Peter's getting those calls, you don't say, sorry, we're not doing that, you know, and come across as you don't want to be the jerk right now, right? You want to have a big heart. And so direct traffic to resources on one hand and be caring and big-hearted. And then on the other hand, the other marketing message, I think, is success stories in spite of COVID. And so that's when you talk about like, hey, I know a lot of you are struggling right now, but we just sold a food truck manufacturing company, and it turns out this is a part of food service that's actually been thriving during the shutdown because food trucks are able to adapt and meet people's needs in a much more flexible way. And this manufacturer that builds food trucks hasn't slowed down a bit, and we were able to close this deal. And so you're celebrating, but like in a not a spike the football kind of way, but in a light a candle in the darkness kind of
Give
way.
hope.
Yeah,
you give hope.
and giving hope. And so to me, that's kind of like the way you be not tone deaf in your marketing right now is you direct resources to people that are struggling, and then people that are doing well, you say, because you want those people that are doing really well. There's some that are sitting on the sidelines thinking, well, I can't, my business is killing it right now, but I can't sell in 2020 because all there are is vultures right now, and I'm not going to be able to get top dollar. And like, that's not true. And you can have messaging that's saying, hey, if you're in an essential business, or you got one that's doing good, we're still getting deals done in this space. You know, everybody else, we encourage you to kind of just hang in there, weather through this. But if you're in this category, give us a call, because we've still got good buyers that are making deals happen in that space. And here's an example, and you're kind of celebrating in a way that offers hope. And so I think that's the two-pronged marketing strategy we're going with, is like hopeful stories for primarily essential businesses, and then resources and empathy towards people that are affected.
Clint, I love your messaging there. I love those two-pronged messaging that you're doing. That's very helpful. Very helpful. I agree with you. It's like being out on the water, and you try to save everybody, and you try to be that hero, you're going to end up drowning yourself. And, I like the idea of just directing them to the resources, and it's probably resources that are better than us that can really help them with the things they need to help. And at the end of the day, what we're selling every day is our time. I mean, our time is our biggest asset, and we can utilize, that time can be used up very, very quickly. I don't know, maybe me personally, I'm a little bit different than everybody. I'm trying to personally stay away from businesses that have been greatly affected by the COVID-19. I'm trying to concentrate on getting the listings that are more of the essential businesses. Now, that goes as far as my marketing and advertising. When I'm marketing and advertising, I'm concentrating on the essential businesses. Now, if somebody calls me and their business is being, has been hurt by the COVID-19, I will have a discussion with them. And again, if I think that they will rebound eventually, it's a really good business. And, and the biggest thing is that they are going to be open to a good price and good terms. I'll talk to them. But as far as marketing and advertising, I'm concentrating on the essential. I just look at it and I think, I don't know how long this is going to be drawn out. There are still a lot of people that are unemployed in this country. And, there's others that are just very careful and they don't want to go out right now. So I don't think we're going to come back with a rebound of our economy anytime soon. I think for the most part, we're probably through the worst of it, unless we have another shutdown. And I think the government is going to do everything they can to prevent another shutdown. But I don't know. I'm just concentrating on the essential businesses. But that's me personally. Anybody else got anything else they want to add?
Jim,
I want to ask one question. Jim, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I'm similar to you. I'm kind of focusing more on the essential businesses. And one of the things I think that, I agree with Emmet and Clint that, selecting businesses, I think that's just good practice, whether it's COVID times or non-COVID times, is businesses that you can get to the finish line. But I think it's even more selective. We've all come across sellers who, think their businesses, you're looking at the comps and you're saying, okay, it's probably worth about $2 million, but they want $5 million. I remember one seller I sat down with, and that was a scenario. I was thinking, well, maybe 2.4 million. And he told me he wasn't selling for 5 million. I think he was shocked when I said, good luck, and wasn't interested in a listing. But one of the things I try to do with sellers now is that, I think even if you're an essential business right now and maybe your sales haven't dipped or have only dipped a little bit, they have to realize when I'm talking with sellers is that, any buyer is buying the future cash flows of your business. And the multiple you're going to get is inverse relationship to the risk. So there's a lot of unknown with the COVID and with the unemployment, kind of like what everybody's been saying. So how long is it going to last? Is there going to be a vaccine? Is it going to come back in the fall? Are there going to be litigations from potential customers or from employees saying, hey, I got COVID on the job? There's a lot of unknowns that as a seller, or as a buyer, they have to consider. So naturally, there's more risk, I think, with pretty much any business out there, so that, you know, they have to consider that, you know, the offers might not be the same as if we would have taken it to market a year ago. So when I'm sitting down with I like to sit and ask that question, see, you know, how their response is, because they'll say, well, you know, I need to, you know, if they're not flexible on that, I'd say, well, you know, let's get through the COVID and we'll revisit selling it in a year or two before I start spending a lot of time and energy on a listing. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know, I think the thing is, we all seven of us work completely different. We go towards the business brokerage industry in totally different ways, and you know, some business brokers out there, maybe not on this call, they work in quantity and they list everything they possibly can. They know that they're going to sell 20% of the things that they list. And then, you know, you got other brokers that, you know, really, you know, they have that criteria that they put around the business, and they only list the businesses that they really think they're going to sell. You know, and I fall into that later category. I probably sell about 80% of what I take to the market because of that criteria. So, you know, we all work different in how we approach that. But, you know, if my suggestion, anybody is going to be looking at listing the businesses that are greatly affected by the COVID-19, you know, they might be sellable, and you know, that's money you're leaving on the table if you don't do it. But keep in mind, are they behind on their rent? You know, make sure that their rent's caught up to date. You know, where are they going to sit? Are they actually going to be in business in 60 days? You know, I know a lot of these small business owners, they have maybe a month or 2 months worth of cash reserves. And, you know, they run out of the PPP money, and that's just for salaries. Are they going to be able to make it through? And you got to remember, they're not going to be back to 100% capacity like a restaurant. You know, if they're running at 50% capacity right now, because that's what, you know, your local area dictates the most you can have in there, it's going to be really hard for them to make it. So I don't know. That's my personal opinion. If you're going to, you know, take on that listing and it's not going to be an asset sale, and, you know, you're looking at it and saying, hey, the business is going to be doing better, you know, towards the end of 2020, look at it and say, will this business even exist at the end of 2020? But, you know, before I want to go to get some questions from people that are in attendance. So if you're listening right now to the webinar and you have questions for anybody that's on our panel today, please raise your virtual hand and I'll bring you in and you can ask them questions directly. While they're doing that, I have one last question for you guys, and you guys just jump in. You guys are all very, very successful business brokers. You're some of the top business brokers around the United States. Talking to either a beginner or not even a beginner, but, you know, somebody who's been doing it a while, what are the things that you think have made you a top producer that you can share with our participants and help them out? Anybody?
I'll get started with that.
Thank you, Emmet.
I would say consistency in the business is important. Even amidst the shutdown in Ohio, when the governor ordered March 24th, we actually had to review, are we considered an essential business? And are we looking for an excuse not to show up at the office because we do have a brick and mortar operation? Or are we going to show up in business as usual and help as many people as we could? So I would say consistency is important. In our business, and we're very seasoned professional in this room, there's a lot of things that's easy for us to do, and there's a lot of things that's also not easy to do, and it's easy not to do the not easy things and make an excuse not to do it. But for me, I would say the number one thing for a new business broker or someone that's been around for a while is, you know, stay positive and be consistent in what you're doing. Have a routine. Have a schedule of when you're meeting with buyers. Have a schedule when you're doing conference calls with sellers. I believe that's important to be successful in the industry.
Great. Thank you, Emmet. Peter, you have any advice?
Well, so the question is, you know, what do you do to keep your sales volume up and be successful? Is that kind of what you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How, you know, what do you contribute to your success as a business broker too? You know, is there a few things that you could just give somebody some advice on that, hey, this is what, you know, took me from, you know, just making average wage to being very, very successful in this industry?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I'll tell you that the best thing I ever did for my brokerage career was to join the IBBA about 10 years ago. And I got a real business brokerage education. And I went to a lot of the conferences and took a lot of classes, lots of credits, and to a point where, I felt like I was really knew what I was talking about. And so when I'm talking to sellers, when they contact me, I want to exude confidence to them and be able to talk realistically with them about their issues, and to really be able to analyze their business and talk to them about what my real expectations are for their sale, and what are the warts that will probably come out, and or what's the good news. I don't like to be too flashy, and I just tell it straight to everyone. And if I don't want to be the business broker that goes in there and promises miracles and then produces relatively little. I like to be the guy that was straight from them with them from the beginning, and what I told them on day one was true. And the same thing goes with buyers as well. And so it's not just getting a listing right; it's selling it. And I also believe in a strong, eyes wide open view of the business right from day one. And if there are warts, I expose them immediately. And I think I get a lot of good marks from buyers that I was straight with them from the beginning. Prevented any sort of aha moments from popping up in the middle of a transaction to cause a renegotiation or a derailment of the deal. And I just try to stay true to my principles, and I think that's what's worked for me. And I don't really have a special magical ability to do this. I just try to be straight with people, do good work, pay attention, and bring home the bacon.
I want to echo what Peter said, Jim. I had this fortunate, so I'm probably one of the least experienced people on this call. So I've been doing this for only 5 years. But I had this privileged position of being able to, I took about a year in 2013, 2014, preparing to launch my business brokerage. And I just sold the business, so I didn't have to be working a job at the time. So I spent a year in my PJs going every online learning I could do. I got a appraiser certificate. I kind of overeducated myself because I knew I was going to be young and inexperienced, and I wanted to kind of overcompensate with that. So I got a bunch of credentials and joined the IBBA and kind of overeducated myself to the point of where in a short period of time of just really immersing myself, I became where I could really hold my own in a conversation and sound like I know what I'm talking about with some of the best people in the industry. Another thing I did is I love doing stuff like this and giving back and sharing my playbook, is because during that year when I was preparing Texas business buyers to launch, I interviewed, like in the IBBA, I was asked who's the best in the industry, and I would call these people and I just say, hey, I'm about to start a brokerage. I don't want to make any of the mistakes you made. Like, how did you do it? How did you, I heard you're the best. How did you do this? And sure enough, like, this is one of the most generous industries. And that's why I'm happy when I got invited by you, Jim, to come here, is because to me, it's like paying it forward, because I probably had 50 interviews with people that were just highly successful, experienced people. And they all said the same things, like, you make more money saying no than saying yes. Just take on good stuff, price it right, set realistic expectations. I'd rather take on 10 deals and get 8 or 9 of them done than take on 30 of them and get 5 of them done, and
right.
like that same thing. I hear that, Peter just said the same thing. I've been kind of following that playbook, but I didn't invent that playbook. I just heard that repeated. I heard a theme every interview I did, is that's how you do it. And then I think the thing that I've done is just build a team and technology around those kind of core philosophies. And that's been our key to success. It's just really, really transparent, over communicate, price it right, set realistic expectations. And if people want to walk, just like James says, let them walk. If they want 5 million and you can only get them 2 million, like I've had now, I can probably point to a handful of deals, probably about 5, where I've been their second, third, or sometimes fourth broker, where people have promised them the world. And I've had people even leave and say, man, no, my CPA says it's worth a lot more than that. This other broker says they can get me that, and I'm like, all right, well, good luck to you, man. But I'm always loving, just loving, honest. And sure enough, they'll come back and say, man, yeah, I listed with that guy. You told me he wasn't going to be able to do it. I didn't listen to you. But my phone didn't ring the whole year. He never got back to me. And I'm coming to you and we're going to get it done. And I'm saying, okay, if we're going to get it done, we're going to play by my rules. We're going to do it right, you know, and we'll get it done. And I'll be their second or third broker, get the job done. And that's always my aim, is to like under promise and over deliver, not the opposite. And I think that if enough of us do that, we can change the tone of our industry to really be a respected, credentialed, professional class of brokers. And the more of us that are doing that, the better the rising tide is going to be for all of us. Because I don't view any of you as competitors. I think our biggest competitor is DIY. I think our biggest competitor is business owners thinking they're smart enough to do this themselves and they don't need our help. But I think most of the deals are done DIY, not with professional brokers. And I think if we all do a really good job and kind of own that philosophy and share best practices, that there's plenty of fish in the sea, plenty of business for all of us. And yeah, I'm happy to be part of stuff like this.
Clint, that is phenomenal insight. That's a phenomenal insight. Touching on what you just said about being the second or third broker coming in, you know, what I see a lot of business brokers do, or inexperienced brokers do, they come in and they're the second or third broker, and you know the seller's upset. You know, hey, I listed with this broker for a year. After I listed, I never heard from them. They never brought me a buyer, and they're really throwing that broker under the bus. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't throw the broker under the bus. First, I don't think we should ever badmouth another broker, but I think the easy thing to do to build a rapport with that seller is to jump on that bandwagon and say, yeah, I can't believe they didn't call you. I can't believe they didn't do this. I can't believe they didn't bring you a buyer. That's the easy way to build that rapport and get a listing. But then you're ending up with a listing just like they had, you know, whereas if you approach that more of, hey, well, let's see why they didn't call, you know, let's see why they didn't have any buyers call them, you know, and, you know, was it price? Was it terms? And then you sit down and say, yeah, this is probably why the broker didn't get any calls. You know, what did the broker tell you to begin with what the business was worth? Well, they told me it was worth X, but I wanted to list at X, Y, and you're like, that's why you're not getting. So that's what I'm getting at, is just don't throw the broker under the bus. I don't think you should throw a broker under the bus ever, but you know, that's why you end up being a third broker sometimes, is, you know. So anybody else have any input on that?
I'll say kind of echo sentiments, is that I think early on in your career, you want to take everything just to get the experience, but then you fall into the 20% of the listings sell and you can get burned out real quickly. I'm kind of like you, Jim. I'm probably at 80% of listings I sell, because I'm very selective, probably being even more selective now with COVID. One other thing that I think has been real helpful for me, which I wish I would have done the first few years of brokering, is that when I sell a business now, like within the next day or two, seller's excited, they've got the money in their pocket, I always go back, send them a quick email saying, hey, could you give me a testimonial that I can use in my marketing? And I think that goes a long way. And do you have any friends that you think might be interested in selling in the next few years? You make the introduction, I'll be glad to help them out too. And that's really helped, I think, you know, not only get listings, you know, from both fronts, from getting referrals, you know, and that's, you know, free advertising for you. And then also, you know, if you've got to do more credentials to potentials too.
It sounds like
a lot of what I heard these guys say, Jim, is that, you know, our favorite four-letter word in our office is work, right? That's what you have to do. You got to work. You got to show up every day. Emmet said it. You know, oh, I got the convenience of being able to stay home. I'm in lockdown, so I'm gonna do some work today from my pajamas or my shorts. No, yeah, every day we got dressed like we were going to work, and we worked, and we made the calls, and we had to increase the amount of touches to the existing sellers and buyers. In fact, we went back to that maybe, you know, the early stages, for whatever reason, they weren't ready, and tapped back into that market to say, are you thinking about it now? Or, you know, depending on when this thing opens up and you come back online, we're here to, we're checking in on you first to make sure you're okay. Just let you know we're thinking about you. Number two, when you're ready, we're here. And it was that
that systematic approach? James is saying the same type of thing, this is what I do the day after I get it. Do you have the systems in place to make things happen automatically so that you or team members don't have to think, well, what's the next step for me to take? And every day you show up and you work. And I love what Clint said. I don't know exactly, I can't quote it, but he went well beyond in getting himself, whether it's a CBI or the IBBA courses, et cetera. A great friend of mine, JJ Prendamana, used to say, learning is never out for the professional. So whether you're in it a year or you're in it 10 years, there's always something new that you have to learn. You got to work and you got to learn.
That's great, JT. Jeanie, I want to hear from you too. You're being quiet, but you are the IBBA top individual global producer for 2019. What has made you such a success? What can you share with our participants?
I view myself more as a matchmaker. It's a personal service industry, so really getting to know the sellers, hearing their stories, why they're selling, what their fears are, taking calls whenever they want to talk, minimum once a week, but if they have a concern at all, they know they can pick up the phone and get me. So I'm looking for the right match for them. I mean, if their clients love them, we're going to look for somebody that's got the same philosophies and personality traits, and typically the buyers are larger, but they're larger firms, but they're still have the same philosophies and goals for their clients. So I love the matchmaking part. I like getting to know them, getting to know the buyers. When I have put a list of buyers in front of the sellers, I'm pretty good at, I'll write down who I think the buyer is going to be, and it typically is that buyer. Surprises me when it's not, but it's the matchmaking side that I love so much. And these people have become friends over the years. I still keep in touch 20 years later with some of these people that I've sold. So, and buyers sometimes are repeat buyers. So just having that good, solid relationship, honest, they know I'm going to be completely honest with them. We have I don't have the number, but it's a very high sell rate. We rarely don't sell what we list. Just maybe if a seller gets spooked or something happens, but rarely. We generally, it might take a little longer, but we find their match.
Jeanie, I think that's a fantastic reminder to everybody. We all need to know the technical aspect, and we need to get educated, and we need to know how to put deals together and think outside the box. But it all starts with what you're saying is finding that the personalities and making sure it's a good fit personality between a buyer and a seller. And I think that's an excellent reminder. So we got Paul McNally. Paul, he's calling in from Florida. Paul, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I sure can. What's your question, Paul?
Great. Well, I have a question, and I'd like to thank everybody for the great information that you're putting forward for us. So to the panel, what adjustments are you making to your opinions of value for both your existing listings and also for the new listings that are coming on? And how are you presenting that to the customer?
So to the customer, meaning the buyer, or you mean the seller?
The seller.
Well, personally, I'm just having a conversation with them about value. And, we might be saying, well, in a normal market, I think we listed at this, but let's be realistic. We think that your business might be somewhat impacted by COVID-19. And so maybe we're thinking, to just ease a little off that asking price possibly. But again, I'm marketing the business based on the 2019 financials unless there's a strong reason to do otherwise. And that should be our goal, is to get a full price for every business that we're selling, unless there's a specific reason not to be able to do that.
Great.
Anybody else?
No, I think that you're on spot there, Peter, because realistically, if there was non-COVID and you were listing a business in March or April, what would you have based it on?
Sure.
2019, same exact thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Pamela, I see that you're on mute still. I can't unmute you. You're gonna have to go in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Pamela, where are you calling from? Pamela? Okay, David. David, bottom left-hand corner, you need to unmute yourself. Wow, we're having a lot of trouble today. Let me see if we can get Peter in here. Okay, as you guys see your name pull up on the screen, you can go to the bottom left-hand corner and click that microphone. There's a red slash through that, and you can unmute yourself.
Here's Peter.
Peter, you there? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, where are you calling from, Peter?
Okay, I'm calling from West Palm Beach, Florida,
Great.
and I'm fairly new to this area, and I do commercial real estate as well as business brokering, and I have some experience up in New York, about 4 years. What I'd like to know is, I know the panel is all heavyweights and experienced folks, but how do you prospect at this point? And I know you have a lot of repeat business, but how are you prospecting at this point? I had done door-to-door to the businesses, to the landlords, etc., and I had real good success. But under the certain the current climate, that's kind of out.
Anybody want to address that? I can tell you, while maybe somebody else will join in after me, we do all different kinds of things at my office. We do from cold calling to drop-off letters to mailers. Most of the work we're getting in right now is referrals. Our hits coming in from sellers has gone down drastically from what we're used to. But we're also in Orlando, Florida, and I think there's still a lot of uncertainty here. If anybody else wants to add anything.
So we do a lot of different things. I typically don't do any of the old school stuff. So I don't do any door to door. I don't do any direct mail, and I don't do any cold calling. But I do old fashioned networking. So every person on my team, we all get in a different networking group. And I encourage anybody that has a pulse and breathes air that works with you to join a networking group. Don't go to 10 different ones, go to one 10 times. You get referrals from trust built up to where they feel like they really know you and can refer their friend that really wants to keep it a secret that they want to sell their business to you because they trust you. So go deep into a networking group. And then Facebook and LinkedIn are big for us. To me, it's just about storytelling. If you've got 10 deals that you're working in your pipeline, or even 2 deals, it doesn't matter. Who here knows that every deal is a huge emotional roller coaster full of drama and amazing things? And to me, like, that's the easiest way to market is, I think the biggest mistake brokers make is they think like the only time you get to market yourself is when you get that testimonial at the end of the deal, or when you get, but no, like you can say, man, we almost lost this deal today without saying anything, that breaks confidentiality. But, oh man, we found this new CPA that could put together the 401k program for the buyer, and he was able to do it, and all these others said they couldn't do it, and I just want to give them props. And so you're giving somebody else props, or you're telling a story, or you're talking about the one that got away, or you're talking about your heartburn and your heartbreak, and just kind of storytelling as you go. LinkedIn is a freaking gold mine right now. I've always been big on Facebook, but Facebook is starting to really become more pay to play and a little bit more, you can still get good action there, but I think like LinkedIn is probably the easiest thing to, if you get something interesting going, anybody that touches that slightly engages with it. So I'll have like, a post on Facebook that gets 80 people liking or something, and it seems to get more eyeballs on it if 5 people touch it on LinkedIn, because it just kind of, they do this amplification effect right now. And so I would encourage you to just share stories, share some of your day-to-day life as a business broker, because I still feel like this is a very mysterious Wizard of Oz industry where people are like, that's really interesting. I just don't know how all that works. If you can be the broker that kind of takes people behind the scenes and says, oh yeah, I'll explain how it works. Yeah, we're working on something like this right now. And then after stuff's done and you're able to clear confidentiality, you can share a little bit more. But to me, it's just been like networking, groups, social media, and then buy a banker, a CPA, a wealth manager, or a commercial real estate agent lunch once a week. So just make sure those are probably the big four. Like if you can get most of those people around here, they don't have a go-to business broker. And it's so easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. These are people that talk to business owners all day long, and they want you as a resource. And we don't compete with anything those professionals do, and we're actually quite synergistic with them. They want to know you. Half the time, bankers just make them buy you lunch because they'll pay for it. They want our deals. But everyone else, you buy them lunch. But I think if you just do that, your networking group, you're active on social storytelling, and then you're buying one of those four credential professionals or you're buying one of those four synergistic professionals a lunch once a week, you're going to get all the deals you can handle. And it's not rocket surgery. I think people just, like JT said, aren't putting in that work and being consistent. But if you show up and are consistent, you'll get tons of business that way.
That's great, Clint. That's really great. Hey, Pam, are you with us now? Pamela? David? Okay, Frank Filer.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for your time and expertise. It's very, very helpful. So I've been doing this a few years now, and I've always marveled at the question of why do you want to buy a business or why do you want to sell a business? So do each one of you have a technique to measure decisively a motivation from a buyer or seller on their objective to accomplish?
So I would just tell you that I don't have a specific measurement tool. However, I am definitely bringing that up with my prospective seller right away. Why do you want to sell? And I'm looking for a suspicious reason as to why they're selling. And if I've got a guy or woman, who has a real successful business and maybe they're about 50 years old, and I'm thinking, why are you selling this now? There's no reason why this business would stop earning money over the next 10 years. You're probably not ready to retire. And, it sounds a little bit fishy to me. And I also know that that's the person, and maybe they really do want to sell and they, legitimately, have a good business. But you know what? That's the type of seller who, when the going gets tough, will not toughen up along with it. And they can drop from a deal because, well, I just don't need to sell. I don't have to put up with this. And, we want sellers that really need to sell and have a strong personal reason for selling, not a business reason. And, so those are the things that I look for. Buyers are a little tougher to gauge, but most buyers, if they're willing to put up cash, they want it. Especially a deposit just to get things started. So I let them weed themselves out on that. We all know that the tire kickers are quickly dispensed of, and that the real buyers are the ones that are sticking around, asking the tough questions, spending the time, focusing on the deal, doing the right things to move things forward.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to go to the Q&A, some typed in questions. Jeanie, this question's for you. Can you please explain further how you set up the formula for a 12-month look-back adjustment on the seller carryback note?
The formula, I did read that question. I was thinking that over. It's based on the revenue that the seller made in the previous year, based on the valuation. So the assumption is that the same revenue will be met by the buyer within 90% or more at 12 or 18 months or whatever period of time that is. So if that revenue is met, then the note would lock in. If it goes above it, the note again can adjust up. And if it is less than, the note would adjust down. So it's really based on the revenue of the practice that then goes to the value.
Jeanie,
That makes sense?
do you attract some kind of percentage, a certain percentage to the overall sales price for the note, and anything like that? I think that's what she's talking about. Is use certain formulas.
Oh, we see 30 to 50% down, sometimes more. If it's bank financing, obviously, it's typically more. But if it's a seller holdback note, it's sometimes 60 to 70% on the note, maybe 50 to 70%.
And I want to let's remember what Jeannie's target categories are. She does a lot of
Right.
personal consultants and financial and CPAs and that type of thing. So
it's only
it would be
investment advisors, people managing other people's money. So those clients come with their assets and their revenue.
It's a total. I wouldn't use the same formulas that Jeannie's using if you're selling a restaurant or a lawn business or a pool business or something like that. Somebody had me on a question here, and I guess I'm in the hot seat, and maybe I'm different than everybody else in the panel. But someone was asking, why I don't do projections. It's just my personal thing. I guess businesses that I sell are, I sell businesses for under $5 million, and I consider that still Main Street. I know some people consider things that for $1 million or $2 million going into M&A, but I know the M&A guys do a lot of projections. For me personally, on the smaller businesses, I don't like to do them because I don't want to be held out with that liability. I think that's up to the buyer that they can go and do it. And I think any buyer that's looking for a business, between $750,000 and $5 million can, kind of make those projections themselves. That's just my personal opinion. Does anybody else not do projections on this panel?
I don't either, Jim, for the exact same reason, liability. I'm kind of in the same space that you're playing, and for the exact same reason. I don't want, if something goes wrong, or let's say the people we sold businesses last year, hey, your projections, you said I was going to make all this money. I don't want the liability or the risk of potential liability. So I feel the same way. Someone that's buying a professional that's buying $1 million, $2-3 million business, they're smart enough to make their own projections anyways. So
right.
I think a reason to do a projection really is only because the circumstances in the future are going to change, and there's something significant that's going to affect the market for that particular business. And that's something you might want to project in just to show people, okay, because, there's all of a sudden going to be 300, new apartments going in next to this liquor store. It's going to bring in this much more floor traffic. I don't know. That's not maybe a great example, but I would only do it if there was something specifically going to change about that business that you needed to clarify to prospective buyers.
Yeah. And I hear that all the time too. Business owners will say, well, there's, an apartment building going in down the street, and there's, they're building 3 neighborhoods around here. They're building a hospital. They're building a strip mall. They're doing this. They're building that. And my response is, yeah, they are building all this, but they're also going to be building your competitors,
Right.
So that's what I get fearful of. Yeah, there could be more people moving in, but that doesn't give it, the business could actually go down. I saw that with UCF. Back in the day, it was it was a very small university. Today, I think it's the largest university in the country or close to it. But back 20 years ago, it was a very small university, and there was a few restaurants there that just killed it. And then in a 5 or 6 year period of time, their numbers just plummeted because just tons of restaurants opened around that area. So I just get worried about projections. That's me personally. And if I feel like a projection needs to happen because there's something that's going to be affecting the business, like they got a new contract or they lost a contract, I turn that back over to the seller or the seller CPA and have them try to do it. That's me. Emmet, I see you're smiling or laughing at me. I hope you're not laughing at me. What are your thoughts, Emmet?
Just getting chat about some people that are attending and giving us a lot of thumbs up.
Okay, great. Somebody asked what my email address was, I guess because they want to get a hold of the buyer-seller acknowledgement letter that the New England Business Brokers Association was very happy to do. And I'll send that as well as the BBF one. My email address is jimpj@bossgi.com. So, okay, here's a question from Joshua. What do you guys see coming in closure after the reserves? VPP and unemployment bonus stop? Are you seeing buyers pause and wait for the big discounts?
It's hard to answer that question today.
Anybody else?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are buyers out there that are just, I do think there's a lot of dry powder out there that's waiting, and they're thinking like in 6 months they're gonna find a lot of good distressed deals. To me, that's just not really where I think I want our firm to play. But I heavily thought about that because I know there's people out there that do have that attitude. But I think as long as there's good ones out there, I'm mainly bandwidth limited by time to do the good deals. And so as long as there's good deals to be done with buyers that are willing to pay a premium price because they get kind of the well-oiled machine that's making money and priced on cash flow, and is bankable and can meet appraisals and all those things we like to see. As long as those are out there to do, we're going to keep focusing on that. And people that are kind of bottom feeders or vultures that are looking for the distressed deals, I'll probably just say, they're out there, but I don't have them at my firm, and kind of direct them that way. But I do think there's people out there that's their strategy right now. And we've had a few conversations with buyers that are taking that approach, and we just kind of use that as an opportunity to educate the marketplaces. Yeah, we realize that could happen, but we're still looking to bring the best deals to buyers that are wanting to get a good, intact, ongoing concern, and not playing the carnage. So like that's kind of the stance we're taking at this time.
Well, a lot of times, sorry, Jim, a lot of times that buyer is also, they're the ones that are going to run you ragged because how good is the good deal? And it's not quite good enough. It's not quite good enough. The person that always wants to pay the least is usually the person that's the highest maintenance buyer too. And that goes back to your pick and choose who you want to be able to serve.
I think the fun thing that we could experience in our business is we're working with business owners that are innovative. And I'm seeing a lot of innovation right now. So the closing I did 2 Mondays ago was a t-shirt printing company that the deal died the first time around March 25th. We weren't able to close, but we did close last Monday because instead of just printing t-shirts, they're actually now printing logos on masks. And the millwork company that I went to Tuesday, where they used to just put cabinets and casing, now they're putting plexiglass for the social distancing. And so now we have added revenue. So I think that's the fun part that we're going to be seeing the next few months is how these businesses have innovated the last few weeks to think about interesting things to bring to market.
On a positive note too, I think that, one of the biggest complaints I've had from sellers the last couple of years, and probably some of the reasons why they wanted to sell, is unemployments were at really all-time lows, and good help was hard to find. They had a lot of people that, they said that, 10 years ago, they would have gotten rid of them a half dozen times, but they just kind of bite their tongue because there's no one to replace them. But, depending on where the unemployment settles out at after COVID, I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities for growth for some of these companies because there's going to be a lot more, there'll be better candidates to hire. So I think that will also, for the bottom feeders, I agree with Clint. I'm not wasting my time with trying to list those type of businesses, but I think there's some, for buyers, there's could be some real upside potential to grow businesses that they buy now because of depending on where the unemployment is.
And there's probably multiple things. Jim, one of your questions was, what are you saying to buyers now? And what James is saying there, that's one of those high points because you're going to get buyers that maybe have come to a certain part in the deal and then they start to pause a little bit. And you go, well, wait a second, let's think about it. It's going to be easier than ever to find people. That's what you guys are talking about now. Landlords are going to be more willing than ever to cut deals on locations because people are abating or vacating left and right. The financing is available today at some of the lowest rates that they're ever going to be able to get. And if they can get through the SBA process and get that 6 months forgiven while they're working, or the 6 months payment while they're learning the business, what a great way to be able to transition into something new. So being able to stack those things on top of each other and being able to have them purchase a business that has upside, because now they come in, they're fresh blood. People are going to be coming back into that business again. How can I grow it? Stack those things on top of each other to help move those buyers across the line. We just did this with a buyer who had paused in April, and the business that is for sale, we went back to old buyers because this guy paused and said, hey, just to let you know, that deal never closed. He hasn't finalized his offer yet. Are you still interested? 2 other people came forward. One of them put an offer in. I went back to that buyer and said, hey, another offer has come in. The same day he was there an hour later to put his offer in, and he's now the one doing the deal.
There's a concept.
Leverage.
There's a concept that I've used a couple times lately. It's just a M&A concept, or it's a private equity concept of the platform and the bolt-on acquisition. And for those of you that are Main Street business brokers who may not be familiar with that language, but in the private equity world, a lot of times people try to buy a large company they call the platform company, and then they buy smaller companies that they call bolt-ons that integrate in and bolt on to the big company, and then together they get a big super company by buying a platform and doing a lot of bolt-ons. If you've got a buyer that's kind of on the hook to buy a premium business, and then all of a sudden they're getting shiny object syndrome, thinking, oh no, maybe I shouldn't buy this because I'm going to get a better deal in 6 months out of the carnage, I would start pitching them on that concept. And I've found it resonating with buyers, because a lot of individual small buyers think of themselves like a private equity group thinks of themselves, and they're empire builders by nature. And if you can convince them that, like, hey, it's going to be way easier for you to scoop up deals if you've got a good, solid, well-oiled money-making machine with good people and good processes in place, that then you can kind of pick up customers and pick up equipment from distressed stuff, than if you try to, it's way easier to build your empire from, instead of doing 10 blood in the streets deals in the carnage 6 months from now, you do one good one right now, and then you can easily bolt on the other 9 to it without losing your sanity along the way.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can kind of approach it like that, like I'm selling companies that could be probably your platform here, and that you could then bolt on distress deals too. So let's get one today. Let's close it before September. Let's get you that 6-month P&I from the SBA. And then, like, I want to help you. Like, I'll help you on the buy side if you want to, like, I don't typically represent those customers, but if we work this deal together, if you find one, like, I can help you negotiate that deal and like work with you a little bit on those bolt-ons. And I think that could be an appealing thing, because I think that there are people out there that are like a breed of super buyers that are not just looking to buy one company, but are looking to buy a bunch of them. And you could kind of borrow that same mindset, that the M&A middle market, that are doing $10, $50 million deals. I think you could do that with a $500,000 or $1 million or $1 million deal today, and recognize that if distressed deals are coming down the pipe, you need a way to bolt those onto something that's already successful, or else you're just going to spend the next couple of years cleaning up giant messes and not making any money. What would you rather do?
That's great, Clint. That's really good. We should probably be wrapping up. We've been going for about an hour and a half, and you guys, all of you guys, I know you guys are top producers. You're trying to make money, and I was happy that you gave us an hour and it turned into 90 minutes. So I really appreciate it. Everybody listening today, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Please join us next Thursday at 2:00. I've got a special webinar coming out, and keep an eye out for an email going out. Until then, work hard, work smart, and keep making those buyer-seller connections. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay.